Grace, mercy, and peace to you from God our Father and Jesus Christ our Lord. Our sermon text today comes from Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. As for you, you meant it for evil against me, but God meant it for good, that many should be kept alive as they are today. Betrayal is like a shark that burst out of the waters to catch a seal in its mouth. It's surprising when somebody that you know or somebody that you love or trust turns against you and sinks their teeth deep into you. It's a painful thing. And I know because it's happened to me. There's somebody that I once trusted and worked with and depended upon. That is, until the gossiper came around. And it wasn't the gossiper that betrayed, because the gossiper was a gossiper. I suspect that person also had some deep betrayal in their life, some kind of pain or wound that they didn't know how to deal with. So it came out as gossip. And then, the person that I depended upon wasn't there to support me when I needed it. And that was the betrayal. And I wasn't a very happy person when that happened. In fact, I was kind of a grump, if you can imagine that. I'm normally just a barrel of sunshine, I know. I wasn't happy for a long time. And that's how betrayal works. It's a deep pain. It's a wound. And the wound comes in other ways to different people as well. A high school group of friends suddenly turns on someone, and the parents notice that their daughter has completely withdrawn. She comes home, shuts the door, closes the world out. The grades drop. The reason is betrayal and the loneliness that follows. The child waits eagerly by the door for dad to come home, but he doesn't. And so that child has to deal with that betrayal and that wound for the rest of his life. Betrayal has a certain distinct bite, a bite that we never forget, a pain that is intense. It causes sleepless nights. It causes agony. It causes anger and bitterness and rage. But it also causes grief. Grief over the relationships that have been broken. And so when I came across chapter 3 of the story and saw Joseph's betrayal, I knew I had to preach on that today, because if you have not already experienced the pain of betrayal, the truth is one day you probably will. And you will know. You will know the relationships that it shatters and the grief that it causes. And so today we need to look at Joseph if we're ever going to understand how to deal with it. As I mentioned before in the children's message, Joseph was thrown into a well by his brothers. You see, Joseph was a proud guy, and he was the favorite of his father, Jacob. And the other brothers were jealous. They were envious of Joseph, and so they threw him in a well. They saw him coming one day, and they came up with this plan. They were going to kill him, but they decided, no, let's have a little bit of mercy on him, throw him in a well, and sell him off to this group of wanderers traveling by. That'll be nicer. And so Joseph was sold, and he found himself in Egypt later on. But consider what that did for Joseph. Not the good. We'll get to the good. But consider what it means to be down there in the well, thrown by your own brothers. It means that your relationship with them is forever injured. It means that you're cut off from your father, who you love. It means that there is this promise that was given to your great-grandfather about inheriting a promised land one day, a promise given from God. And because of that betrayal, you're down in the pit, and maybe not a part of the promise. And so this betrayal cut Joseph off from his family, his brothers in particular, and his father, but also maybe even the promise of God. He would be forced to live as a foreigner and an alien in a strange place for the rest of his life. And what would happen if he met his brothers again? Would they try to kill him? We don't know. And think about what it meant for his father as well. Jacob said that he would mourn his son all the days of his life. The reason why he said that was that his brothers came to Jacob and said that Jacob was attacked by an animal and they couldn't get there in time to rescue him, and so he's now dead. So Jacob believed that his son Joseph was dead. And that caused grief, a lifetime of grief. And think about also the brothers. They would have to carry this weight with them all of their days. They betrayed their brother. What would happen if anybody ever found out what they did? Should they confess it or should they hide it? What is it going to mean between them and God? So betrayal works in 360 degrees. It fractures relationships. It injures both the betrayer and the one who is betrayed. But all of that can be healed with one simple thing. That's forgiveness. Not easy forgiveness. Not, oh, it's okay. I know you didn't mean it. You probably accidentally just bumped into me and I fell into the well. But the kind of standing in the place of God, speaking his words to his people sort of forgiveness. So Joseph later on rises to power in Egypt. And he actually becomes second only to Pharaoh. And there he is standing in this place and position of power. When he runs into his brothers again, he allows them to live in Egypt, but the time comes where Jacob dies, and now his brothers, his ever-scheming brothers, are paranoid. Our dad is gone, and maybe for his sake, Joseph was keeping us alive, so we need to come up with some kind of plan, some sort of idea. So they get together, and they come up with the idea. They talk to Joseph, and they say this, before Jacob died, you won't believe this, I know, but before he died, he commanded you to forgive us. So, will you forgive us? And the amazing part is that Joseph wasn't waiting on the perfect apology. He wasn't waiting on the exact words or a listing of all the wrongs that had been done. Joseph was not interested in trying to even out the balance sheet. He loved his brothers. And love doesn't wait for a perfect apology. Love doesn't wait for a perfect apology. And so he says to his brothers, am I standing in the place of God? You're coming to me for forgiveness, but it's God alone who forgives. Do you really think that I am that powerful now? And the truth was, not because of Joseph's position or his rank in Egypt, but in a way he was standing in the place of God. Here's what I mean. In that moment, as a believer in Yahweh, Joseph was able to speak forgiveness. Not just shallow, cheap, oh, it's okay forgiveness, but again, the forgiveness of God. And in fact, he actually uses words that God will later use. If we look through the rest of the story, if we go to verse 21, we have Joseph who speaks tenderly to his brothers. He comforts them. And if we continue to read the story, we'll find ourselves coming up in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 1. Comfort, comfort my people. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Once again, the people of Israel had turned against God. And this is centuries later in Isaiah's day. And they had turned against God to the point that the covenant was shattered and broken. And so the people of Babylon came and carried the people of Israel into exile. And there's a silence for a time, but then God speaks. And those first words are similar words that Joseph uses. Comfort, comfort my people. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. So Joseph, centuries before any of that, uses these same kind of words to speak to his brothers. He spoke to their hearts as he wept, forgiving them. So in a way, yeah, Joseph was standing in the place of God, not only offering Joseph's forgiveness, but also God's. And so it was that God pardoned Joseph's brothers. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for you as you maybe think about betrayals that have happened in your life, or think about those who you are angry with right now, or those reams of paper that you're carrying around with you? It means that before you can forgive your brother or sister, you need to go and take that deep, terrible wound of betrayal to Christ. You need Him to cleanse it first. And you need to go back to Him every time that wound is opened over and over again, because you know it's true that you don't usually just forgive somebody once, right? Every time that wound is opened, every thought, every time they do something that reminds you of the past, every word spoken that somehow brings back a memory, causes the need for you to forgive them over and over and over again. So before I go and forgive my brother or sister, I go to the one who is standing between me and my brother or sister, Jesus Christ, and I show him the wounds, and I have him cleanse it with his own love and forgiveness. And out of that cleansing, out of that healing, I forgive my brother or sister who sinned against me. We are people who don't really deserve betrayal, right? We would consider ourselves as good friends, as loyal and honest people. We're not like those betrayers out there when you really stack things up. When you review your relationships, you've been good to your friends and your family. You've only had to be hard to those who were hard to you. And you never went over and beyond what was needed in a given situation. You've done your best to be honest and good. You've tried to deal with your anger, and so you wouldn't label yourself as somebody who is a betrayer. Except for that one time. We know that one time. There was this guy who came around who was righteous and loved by his Father. And something about that, maybe just being around him made us aware of our own shortcomings because he was so perfect. Or maybe we were jealous of the way in which the Father treated him. But whatever it was, we put our hands on him. We threw him onto the cross and then threw him down into the pit of death. And it was this Jesus that we have betrayed by our own sin. There is no worse betrayal than this. And this one betrayal, if it is even your only one betrayal, is worse than any other offense or hurt that anybody can lay against you. But this Jesus who was betrayed by you and by me was risen by the Father. And because of that, he is not ashamed to call us brothers. In fact, Hebrews tells us that he is the source of our sanctification. In other words, his holiness, his righteousness flows into our wounds so that his holiness and righteousness might flow out to others. So as we go out into the world, we need to consider what forgiveness means. We need to think about how it plays into the rest of the story, which is our story. And we can do that by looking at Joseph one more time. Think about this moment where Joseph's brothers are standing before him, and as they are, with even their own imperfect apology, begging his forgiveness. If Joseph had not forgiven his brothers, they would have been sent out of Egypt, and they probably would have died on their own. There would have been no slavery in Egypt, but also no Moses who would have come to deliver them. There would have been no walk through the desert, no entering into the promised land. This forgiveness keeps and binds the people of Israel together. The promise that was given to Abraham flows through this forgiveness to Joseph and to his brothers. And so it is for us. What holds us together as the people of God? Good works? No. But love for one another and the way in which we forgive. After all, we do pray that prayer. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. So maybe today is the time to think about those who we need to forgive, those who have betrayed us, those who have hurt us. Maybe stop waiting around for that perfect apology to come. And maybe we also need to think about those hurts that are out there in our community and the hurts that are there in the world as well. And how do we, as the priesthood of believers, deal with that? The answer is simple, but the work is often hard. We, as the priesthood of believers, go and stand in the place of God and bring forgiveness and mercy to the world and healing